Hello, everyone, and welcome to Listen, Learn, and Lift BIPOC Mental Health and Allyship. My name is Kisa Scales, Ambassador working with the Christian Writing and Speaking Division's Level Up Christian Institute. So while today I will be providing you with the first introduction to one of MPrep Inc.'s newest course editions called Rise and Thrive, the culturally grounded mental health and leadership course for Black and Brown professionals, I want to first share a story with you, Maya's story. It was Monday morning, and Maya, a mid-career professional, sat in another meeting where her ideas were overlooked and her very presence was questioned. She felt the weight of code switching or shifting from your natural voice and dialect to fit a certain communication standard. She felt the exhaustion of having to prove herself over and over again, and the longing for a space where her identity was considered a strength and not a liability. That day, Maya decided her story would not be one of shrinking, but it would be one of rising. Through ancestral wisdom, culturally rooted mental healing, and faith-based centered practices, Maya transformed her narrative, and so can you. So if you're asking, who is Maya? I am Maya. Every Black and Brown professional who has experienced this story is Maya. So ask yourself today, are you Maya, or are you someone who can be an ally to Maya? So what is Rise and Thrive? And what was the reason for creating a course like this? Rise and Thrive exists because racial bias and microaggressions don't just bruise feelings, they disrupt purpose. They chip away at our confidence. They silence our brilliance, and they force Black and Brown professionals to spend their professional energy surviving instead of thriving. This course restores that energy. It equips participants to reclaim their voice, their agency, and their professional purpose and power. This course also gives allies and aggressors the tools that they need to recognize harm, interrupt it, and build workplaces where everyone can rise. It's a transformative self-guided course created to empower Black and Brown professionals and to equip all learners with the awareness and allyship skills needed for all of us to listen, learn, and lift. So I want to start with a simple exercise. Raise your virtual hand or type yes in the chat if you're here to grow as a leader. I'll kick us off. I'm definitely here to grow as a leader. And I think I'm seeing some hands go up that all of you share those sentiments as well. And thank you for sharing that. So raise your hand again, your virtual hand, or type yes in the chat if you're here to better support others. I'm definitely here to better support others. And now, raise your hand if you're here to do both. I see a lot of hands raised. Thank you, Jane, for raising your hand. Yes, I think that is all of our end goal. We want to grow as a leader. We want to better support others. Thank you, Chantel. But we don't always have the resources or the information that we need to be able to do so. So I like what I love about these responses is that they do show our intention. We're not here to just sit back. We're here to stretch. We're here to elevate. We're here to lead with purpose. That type of mindset is exactly what will set us up for our individual success and for our collective success. And with that short exercise, let's take a look at what this course is going to guide us through in that journey of growing as a leader and supporting others. So when we think about rising and thriving together, we need to build and understand shared language for mental health and professional wealth. So let's talk about some terms that are essential for moving through this course. Microaggressions, and specifically racial microaggressions. Microaggressions are those comments or behaviors that communicate bias, stereotypes, or negative assumptions towards a marginalized group. While racial microaggressions are those everyday verbal, behavioral, or environmental slights that convey hostile, dismissive, or invalidating messages about someone's race or ethnicity. And while the term micro does indicate small, microaggressions are anything but small, and their impact is real. These are the comments or behaviors, intentional or unintentional, that are often rooted in ignorance or preconceived notions or in sending dismissive or invalidating messages just because of something someone looks like, how they speak, these types of things. These are still microaggressions, even if someone feels like they, quote, mean well, or they, quote, don't mean any harm. Every professional needs to understand these concepts because they shape trust, they shape our belonging, and they shape our psychological health and safety. When we can recognize when these things are happening, we can prevent harm and we can create workplaces where people genuinely feel included and respected. So, why does all this matter? What is the impact of microaggressions on mental health for the BIPOC community? Recent mental health research has sought to just answer that very question. In a 2006 study by Irvin et al., a national sample of more than 400 Black women highlighted experiences of gendered racial microaggressions at all age groups. And these experiences were significantly associated with higher rates of anxiety and depression. In a 2005 study by Ezemanika et al., a sample of 200 rural Black women reported 21.5% and 31% of clinical depression and psychological distress, respectively, with those outcomes being directly linked to their experiences with racial microaggressions. So let's dive in and take a look at what these microaggressions look like in real time, in real professional settings. Let's start with some examples of verbal microaggressions. You're so articulate. That implies surprise that a person of color is intelligent or well-spoken, reinforcing stereotypes about competence. Or what about I don't see color? While it may appear to be a supportive statement on its surface, it actually erases racial identity and it invalidates a person's lived experiences with racism. Or how about your name is too hard to pronounce? Do you have a nickname? This sends a message that someone's identity is inconvenient and should be altered to suit others' comfort. I can say that I've experienced all of these over the course of my 20 plus year career. And I could guess that some of you today here have also experienced these things. And what about behavioral microaggressions, such as mistaking a Black or brown colleague for someone in a lower status role, or assuming that someone is the diversity hire? I've experienced these firsthand as well. And both of these are examples that reinforce stereotypes about competence, capability, status, and belonging. And what about the popular one, touching someone's hair without getting permission? This is an invasion of personal space, and it's a tactic that often is used to objectify cultural features. And finally, Let's talk about environmental microaggressions. This might look like leadership teams that lack racial diversity, dress code policies that penalize certain hairstyles. Think about dreadlocks or braids, for example, or even cultural attire. This might even include colorblind policies that ignore racial inequities. Taken together, all of these microaggressions encourage assumptions about who can be a leader. They minimize cultural identity, and they dismiss opportunities for important dialogue about divisiveness and status quo. So now that we have had this quick lesson on microaggressions, racial microaggressions, and what they look like, let's engage in a quick exercise. In one sentence, describe a microaggression you've witnessed or learned about. You don't have to use any identifying names, just name the behavior. And as you drop your answers in the chat, I'll start us off. Like me, you might be one who has experienced all of those examples that were discussed on the previous slides. The "you're so articulate" comments that I have a lower level, comments and assumptions that I have a lower level position, and people even questioning me about how I was even able to get my job have all been recurring microaggressions throughout my career in public health. Thank you. Yes, thank you for sharing your answers in the chat. It looks like a lot of you have had some experiences with this. It's a real thing, and it is an uncomfortable topic sometimes. I see a lot of yeses where you guys have said that you've experienced these things in real time. Miss Wilson said she doesn't like it when people touch her hair or look surprised when they hear she's well educated. Yes, that those are very real microaggressions. They're persistent, they're pervasive, and they still sting no matter how many times you hear them. People can say, people can say, I've heard this over and over and over again, and it still stings. And it does, because it's difficult to walk sometimes in this life, in this skin, and have to hear those same microaggressions over and over again. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Wilson, for sharing that. So the next exercise, I want you to raise your hand and just simply acknowledge whether you've seen a microaggression happen in a meeting or a group setting, or if you've actually experienced that in a group setting. And again, I'll speak up, and I certainly have. I think I've said as we've gone through that I've experienced a lot of these microaggressions. Annika, thank you. Yes, we see them, we experience them. It's a real thing, and we have to acknowledge it. We have to acknowledge that elephant in the room if we're going to be able to make some real progress towards moving through this as a team, as aggressors, as allies, as people who are experiencing these things in real time as a BIPOC professional. So thank you for sharing that. And the last part of this, what is your comfort level with speaking up if you experience them firsthand or if you witness them? Are you comfortable, uncomfortable, or somewhere in between? Please start dropping your thoughts in the chat. And I'll say that while I'm certainly more comfortable speaking up about this issue now, there was a time when I was timid and fearful to speak up. And what I want to emphasize here is whether you're comfortable, uncomfortable, or somewhere in the middle, there are absolutely no wrong answers. This is simply a time to acknowledge where you are in your journey and just make a personal commitment to making real progress. And let's see what we have in the chat. Chantel says he's comfortable. Yes. And I'm sure that getting there was a journey. And Annika, especially when she was a kid, she was super comfortable. She's super uncomfortable, but she's comfortable now. Yeah, I agree. I thank you for making that connection, Annika, because I do think there's a level of comfort that comes with age, that comes with experience. So yes, thank you for sharing that. Oh, Miss Wilson said she asked people what do they mean when they're saying that they're when they're saying it, because many people are unconscious that the behavior is offensive. Absolutely, absolutely. That's what I was saying previously. Some people really do think that they don't mean any harm. And this is why we need to educate on this topic. This is why we need to connect this topic to mental health disparities. Because on its face, it might look harmless, but the research is showing that it's having a real impact on BIPOC anxiety and depression and how these people show up in the workplace. Yes, thank you. Yes, you're right. Others double down and try to prove that it's okay to be that way, and it isn't okay to be that way. That's a very good point. And in this process, you won't be able to change everybody, and that's a real thing that we have to acknowledge. While we can try, there will be those times where you just can't be that change agent for somebody, and that's okay. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. Great comments. Thank you all for that. So let's start taking a high level look at what some of the modules in this course look like. So let's start with module 1, claiming your cultural identity and calling, rooted in identity and honoring your story. And I want to say that while this course is targeted towards the mental health and well-being of BIPOC professionals, each module does carry with it a lesson for allies or a lesson even for aggressors, with a call for intentional awareness, intentional allyship. And so what I want to say here is that our identities shape how we lead. For Black and Brown professionals, identity is often a well of resilience, creativity, and purpose. Honoring our story, including the people who shaped us, it can be a powerful leadership practice. And for aggressors and allies, understanding your own cultural lens helps you recognize bias, avoid assumptions, and show up as an intentional ally, someone who's willing to learn, someone who's willing to even intercept if they need to. So let's do a brief exercise. Share in the chat one cultural value, tradition, or even a person whose influence has shaped who you are today. And I'll even start us off. I grew up surrounded by a lot of women in my family, my mother, my grandmother, my aunts, women who poured cultural pride into me long before I even really understood how much I would need it later down the line. They taught me who I was. They taught me where I come from. They taught me why my voice mattered. So later, when the world tried to tell me that I didn't belong or I didn't have anything to offer, I could then lean on the identity that they built in me early and stand firmly in my worth. Thank you, Annika. Grandmother was a huge influence. Yes, so was mine. I think we learn to really appreciate those people, as we move on in life. We might yours too, Miss Jackie. Thank you. Yeah, I think sometimes when we're young, we don't really realize how much of an influence they're going to be later down the line. But we can, when we're experiencing things like this, especially racial microaggressions, general microaggressions, we can really lean into our identity. We can lean into those people who really grounded our culture in us to sort of come back to ourselves when people are trying to take us away from ourselves. So yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that. So before we transition to the next module, I just really want to stress that grounding ourselves in our identity and our cultural story helps to set the foundation for how we care for our well-being, for how we use our voice, and for how we as professionals get to navigate our leadership journey. So Module 2 explores mental health and emotional wellness. It's a healing module to help us sort of heal as we go. This module helps Black and Brown professionals understand that our emotional experiences are valid. Racial stress is a real thing, and tending to your mental health and well being is an act of leadership. If you are an aggressor or if you're an ally, this module will help you expand your understanding of racialized stress. It'll help you respond with empathy, and it'll help you avoid minimizing others' experiences. So let's do a brief exercise. In one word, share in the chat how stress shows up for you. It could be mentally, emotionally, or physically. And as you're dropping your responses in the chat, I will kick us off. For me, stress shows up as tension. My mind tenses up. My body tenses up. And it can really stop me in my tracks. It can infringe upon me really carrying out my true purpose. So I'm curious, how does stress show up for you in your life? Are you does it show up in your body? Do you feel it more physically? Do you feel it more emotionally? I want to hear from you guys. Some of you might still be thinking about how you want to respond. Not able to sleep. Yes. Yes, Jane. Insomnia is a big one. It does show. Thank you, Jane, for that. Insomnia is a big one. I think I should have probably added that one to my list too when I'm stressed out. It shows up in how you respond to other people. It absolutely does, Miss Wilson. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Mentally and physically, yes. Sometimes you get that 1-2 punch when you're dealing with some stress. So these are all very real, all very valid. And they're things that as professionals we need to pay attention to. We need to understand why it's happening. We need to have tools to help us sort of move through that stress. And this course can help us do that, especially for the topic at hand. So thank you, thank you. So yeah, I just want to stress here, understanding our stress, understanding how it shows up, understanding that mental sort of internal dialogue and our mental health, as well as the health of others. All of these things work in tandem to strengthen how we show up externally, especially in our voice and our presence, which does transition us into our next module. So, module 3 is all about confidence, voice, and presence, centering yourself with a bold belonging. For BIPOC professionals, this module helps us understand that our voice does carry power. Reclaiming our voice is an act of belonging, it's an act of self advocacy, and becoming your own personal ally. And I want to say that while external advocacy is crucial in this issue, we don't have to sit idly. As BIPOC professionals, we can start with ourselves. For aggressors and allies, this module helps you expand your awareness and learn about those areas where you can sound the alarm and use your voice to interrupt bias, to amplify equity, and to create space for others. So let's do another brief exercise. Share in the chat one situation or one environment where you feel the most confident. Is it presenting? Is it collaborating with others? Is it serving as a mentor? Is it problem solving? And I'll kick us off. I do feel the most confident when I'm collaborating on diverse teams with members who either share or openly acknowledge my lived experiences. This helps me to really lean in and to use my voice. Yes, Miss Wilson, an older woman who once shared that you have to be your first advocate and that advice has taken you far. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I think especially with this topic, I think sometimes BIPOC professionals don't always, they're just looking for an ally, looking for an ally, looking for an ally. But what I've learned is, it is nice and we do need allies, but we need to start with ourselves. We need to self-advocate. We need to be able to do that. Chantel Wright, collaborating and presenting. Yes. Outreaching. Brazil, thank you for that. Yeah, it's important to know and recognize those areas where you show up as your most confident self, because it's really going to help you to move through as a BIPOC professional. It's going to help you to be a self ally. It's going to help you to be a team ally. So every place of confidence that you guys have identified and shared in the chat, or you've just identified mentally in your brain, I encourage you to use those areas where you feel the most confident, as your training ground, as you navigate, racial issues and healing and mental health. Use those areas of confidence to practice and to hone your skills as an ally or a leader or a professional. Because confidence in speaking out and speaking up, it equips us to navigate this type of bias, navigate these type of barriers with more clarity and with more courage, essentially. And this is what's going to move us into our next module. So for module 4, we'll explore resilience in navigating bias and barriers. For Black and Brown professionals, this module helps us to accept that we do deserve psychological safety. We deserve respect. It provides strategies to navigate bias in a way that protects our mental health, protects our well-being, and ultimately protects our career. For aggressors or allies, through this module, you'll come to understand that bias response is a collective response. Your intervention can shift your work culture, and it can protect your colleagues. So let's do a brief exercise. What's one phrase that you wish you could say when you witness bias? It can be a serious answer. It could be a simple answer. Anything goes here. And I'll start us off with this one. The word that I choose if I'm witnessing bias is simply the word stop. I like it because it's demonstrative. It's a command. It gets the attention that you need before you start making your point. What other words could help you introduce those conversations of bias when you witness it? What could you say in real time besides stop? What could you say in real time to help sort of get people's attention and hold the floor so that you can respond? I really like Jackie's response of asking, what do you mean by that? Yes, because it forces a thoughtful answer. It kind of doesn't give a way of escape. It's an accountability question. What do you mean? I want to know, what do you mean? And it puts the onus for you to fully explain, what did you mean by that? Getting to the why is so important when we're communicating regularly, when we're communicating in conflict resolution. And it most certainly is a valid question to ask when you're seeing racial bias. Thank you, Jane, for that. It's great. It's an accountability question. And before we move on, I'll just wait a few more seconds to see if anyone has anything to add. But yes, these are the tools that you can use. The stop, get people's attention, stop, a combo. Why do you mean that? Can you explain yourself? Can you elaborate on that? So these are all tools that you can use in real time, even if you were one of those people who said you were uncomfortable with speaking up earlier. When people start understanding their why, it shifts perspective and helps them face their demons. Exactly. And that's why this course is designed holistically for everybody. It's a space to learn. It's a space to become more aware. It's a space to recognize whether you're part of the solution or whether you're part of the problem. So yes, thank you. These are all really, really great responses. So before we do move on to the next module, I just want to sort of emphasize that understanding that responding to bias, it's part of protecting our professional purpose. And our purpose is sustained not only through action, but it's also sustained through rest. And rest is the topic that's going to transition us into our next module. So now we finally come to the last modules 5 and 6. And these modules are rooted in rest, in purpose, and in legacy. For Black and Brown professionals, these modules are intended to reinforce that rest is both a form of resistance and it's a form of restoration. Your purpose, it deserves spiritual, physical, and mental replenishment and protection. For aggressors or allies, these modules encourage you to honor, model, and support the need for rest. Advocate for rest. Advocate for good mental and physical health. Advocate for work-life balance. So, in a brief exercise, in one sentence in the chat or one phrase, what impact do you hope that your leadership has on others in terms of their mental health and their professional well-being? And I'll start us off. I want my leadership to leave a legacy that proved I championed the mental health and well-being of BIPOC professionals, that I was a model of what true care really does look like, and that I equipped those that were coming behind me to do the same. So tell me, what legacy of leadership do you want to leave? After we've gone through this simple sort of course introduction and what these modules are intended to do and how they're intended to shape you, what sort of legacy of leadership do you want to leave? And we'll take a little moment here so you can really put your thoughts in the chat, since it's not a simple yes or no question. And it might be one that you're still thinking about. It might be an answer that you're still shaping in your mind, that you haven't fully, come to grips with exactly what type of legacy you want to leave. And that's okay too. Anybody? I want people to know that I've changed people's lives for the better. Exactly. That sort of collective leadership, that your leadership is making you better, it's making those around you better, that it's inspiring them to change others. Exactly. We want good leadership to be contagious. That's anything good, we want to be contagious. So yeah, we want to change people's lives. We want to inspire them to change better. We want to be that sort of good contagion that's contributing to the overall health and well-being of BIPOC professionals, of our allies, of everybody. So yeah, thank you. Jane, I want people to see themselves as leaders. That's a big one. A lot of people, there's so many untapped leaders, Jane, I think. I think there's so many people that don't think that they are a leader when actually they don't think they are a leader when actually they really are. They just need maybe that extra push. They need that extra encouragement. They need to tell somebody, well, if you don't think you're a leader, these are the ways that I see you showing up in life that says otherwise. So yeah, that's an excellent answer. You want people to see themselves as leaders. I agree. When they see themselves as leaders, they'll start walking more into that leadership voice and that leadership power. So yeah, wonderful answers. Thank you all for these great responses in this interactive presentation. And so I just want to say that the point of this course, the point of this sort of mini course introduction and exercise workshop, is really intended to encourage us all to work together to build our legacy on listening to each other, learning from each other, and lifting each other into our purpose. Yes, Mr. Wright, to add value, to make genuine connections, to make a positive impact on people's lives. Yes, genuine connections. That one sticks out to me, because you don't want a lot of surface level connections. While they are important and while they do help us take care of our day-to-day business, it's those genuine connections that really can make long-lasting relationships. They can really build relationships, build trust, build the teams that are really focused on, not only the business of the organization, but also just really genuinely caring for each other and protecting each other in psychological safety, in speaking up, in rest, in all of the things that these modules cover. So yes, adding value, making genuine connections. Let's all just strive to make genuine, true connections, not surface level connections. So yes, thank you. That's a wonderful, wonderful response. So I want to thank you for your time. And as you leave today, I hope that you all have been able to see how every choice we make, how we rest, how we show up, how we speak up for ourselves, for other people, how we support each other shapes the legacy that we leave. And I hope that you'll remember that when Black and Brown professionals are free from the weight of racial bias and stress, they don't just survive, they thrive. They transform organizations through their purpose. Rise and Thrive teaches aggressors, bystanders, allies, and BIPOC professionals. It teaches us all how to dismantle harmful patterns and replace them with accountability, with cultural humility, and with our shared leadership. The result of that is a workplace where purpose is no longer obstructed by prejudice and where everyone benefits from the full, unapologetic brilliance of BIPOC professionals and leaders. So I charge you with this today. I ask you to commit to one practice that you will carry forward from today, something that strengthens your voice, your mental well being, and it strengthens your allyship of self and your allyship of others. What is that commitment you'll make to yourself and others as you move forward in your leadership? For me, I will commit to listen, to learn, and to lift myself and others so that we can all rise and thrive together. If you're wondering, where can I start rising and thriving through mental health and allyship? Then visit www.imprep.com/Lucy to start your journey today. Thank you all for your commitment to listen, learn, and lift today. Thank you.